Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, their habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Respino, and today I have a special guest. And let me ask you this, have you ever thought about how relations can be a little bit hard? Well, the spark fades and every conversation feels like walking on eggshells. It's easy to drift apart. That's where today my guest, Dr. Dan Sneider, comes in. He's a licensed couples therapist, educator, a creator of the Intimate Shift, a blueprint for moving from conflict to lasting connection, a 12-week program that transforms couples' relationships by rebuilding trust, improving communication, and rediscovering real intimacy. With personal experience and over a decade of professional expertise helping hundreds of couples, Dr. Dan knows what it takes to shift from conflict to connection and bring the spark back for good. Here to share how real change happens in relationships, Dr. Dan Sneider. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well today, Cesar. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I love what your show is doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you for being here. Let's start from a little bit from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing, because I believe that even in your particular case, on the things you're doing, there's a lot to be said, when you have a family. So tell me about your upbringing and where are you originally from?
Yeah, happy to share a little bit about myself. So I'm originally from the suburbs outside of Chicago. And yeah, I like to share a little bit about the good and the bad, and it's not all one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So on the outside, I grew up with a lot of privilege. I grew up where my material needs were taken care of. I was able to do activities that I wanted. We had food in the house, roof over our heads, all that good stuff was really well taken care of. On the emotional side of things, I learned from an early age about overcoming,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna throughout our conversation kind of come back to that because I know that's
Yep.
your framework for this show, and I think it's such an important message about not how many times we fall down, but about how many times we get back up. And
Right.
so in my early life, in my household, there was a lot of dysfunction happening inside those four walls. My dad would come home and it would either be hot or cold, either angry, drinking, yelling at people, throwing things, or cold, distant, not talking. So I had to learn from an early age, how to overcome that circumstance. What could I do to either get out of his way or to be on his good side, or how to adapt myself for that circumstance. So, uh, had to learn that lesson. I did learn that lesson, and got through. But the downside, the consequences to learning those lessons is that I became really avoidant in relationships. I would withdraw from people, experience depression, and had a very hard time trusting people. So that's kind of how things started, and ever since then, right? I've been working to overcome that early wiring so that I can feel safe in connection, so that I can build trust and loyalty with partners. And fast forward, we can dive in more on the details, but fast forward, that's
Mm-hmm.
why I started working with couples and helping with relationships because it was things I needed in my life, but also, I really have this gift for connecting with other people that have gone through those kinds of things that get in the way of closeness and intimacy in their relationships.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, kind of going back to that, again, I feel like sometimes we have to do certain things in our lives to help us discover something that one we want to help ourselves, but we discover something that might be good. That now that we're doing it and it's helping our lives, it'll be good for us to do the same thing for others. And obviously, it seems like you went through that, and you started that. The fact that you were able to connect and you feel like I have this gift, right, to be able to connect with people. This might be a path for me to take on, because not only are you now helping people, but you yourself went through it, right? So I want you to
Mhm.
talk about that, because I think it's very important for people to understand where you're coming from and why you decided to now make that same shift, not only for your life, but now, hey, now you can share this with people. What was the challenges you were facing yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, a little bit more detail
Hmm.
there to the story. So within that household, within that childhood I was describing, a really important person for me, I think for everybody, right? Like their mom, right? Or one of their adults, their caregivers. My mom was incredibly loving and incredibly kind. She wasn't able to protect us early on from what was happening with my dad and what was happening in the house. She has her own story, but what I learned from her was about being compassionate and loving, and that it was safe and okay for me to share my feelings with her, not with maybe my dad, maybe not with other people, right? We can talk about what it's like to be a man in this
Right.
world and how that connects with our feelings. But that gift that I have for connection, really comes back from her. And even though our house was chaotic and dysfunctional, I did learn from her that, my feelings were, mm, they were worthy, right? They could be seen by the right person in the right place. And so there's been almost a battle within me, ever
Hmm.
since of where is it safe, where is it not safe, and working through that. And so, yeah, for a lot of people, they didn't have both sides, right? They didn't have that person that maybe they could share their feelings with.
Right.
And so that's really how I see my ability going into the work that I do, to be able to work with both sides in that relationship, that tug of war that happens between feeling safe, feeling unsafe, and how do we kind of work to overcome that survival instinct, that wiring to protect ourselves from harm.
Yeah, definitely. So you're working with multiple different people that, again, they just, it kind of reminds me of something that a family member mentioned to me a while back. And they were in the relationship for a long time, and it said, you know I think we've fallen out of love, but it's gotten to the point where we're just accustomed to each other, accustomed to being with each other, living with each other, and just, living that life, right? Um, Talk to me about what are some of the mm, things you're seeing or facing, or maybe even from your own perspective. What are some of the challenges that people are facing that gets them into that situation where, like, that spark is gone, right? So let's talk
Mhm.
about that first, and then we'll talk about how we can get back into loving each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. So your listeners can get a free handout and can learn more about me at intimacyshift.com. And I named my program and my site Intimacy Shift because in all of our relationships over time, things are going to change. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you feel about your partner during that first year in the relationship, when things are hopefully, right, normally like hot and heavy and passionate. Things are new. You're getting to know each other. 3 years down the line, 5, 10 years or more down the line, you're different people, and your brain is not firing, the same way as it did during that first year. And so intimacy does shift and change. And that's normal. That
Mm-hmm.
is common. It's happened in my life and my relationships, and I'm sure all your listeners know what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, we add in things like having kids, job changes, we move. All of that is gonna cause challenges in the relationship to feeling close. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, I just want to validate for everybody out there listening. Like, if that's happening in your relationship, you're not alone. That is normal. That does make sense. And there are ways to work through that and to be excited, and to have passion and intimacy in your relationship, even if you have been with someone for a long time and you feel, totally accustomed and it's almost like a sibling relationship rather than a lover.
Mm.
We can absolutely rediscover some of that joy again in the relationship if we work at it.
Right. Yeah. So you talked about right. It could be different factors, external factors. Job, movement, kids. The different things. What do you find to be the biggest contributor to that disconnection? Is it a lot of people talk about uh, a lot of times it's money. It could be another family members, of each part, depending on of which side of the party, right? Tell me a bit more about that, because I think that's a focal point for people to kind of pay more attention to overcome that from happening, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I talk a lot in my practice
Mm-hmm.
about the difference between reasons and excuses.
Mm.
And so I think it's pretty easy for people to come up with excuses for things or to blame things, right? It's their fault, they did this and that's why I'm upset, right? So we can blame, we can create an excuse. And I try to think about reasons because when we have a reason for something, we're more motivated to change and to do something about it. If we're making an
Mm.
excuse, then it's like, all right, not my problem,
Yeah,
right? That's
you're
on
walking away.
them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are, reasons for why intimacy shifts and changes. And then it's, well, what do we do about it? And I haven't talked about this with you yet, but I'm also a lifelong athlete, right?
Okay.
I was a wrestler for a long time. So I wrestled in high school, I wrestled throughout college, and then after college, I got into running and to rock climbing, and I've always had an athletic pursuit, and that's a big part of why I feel so strongly about these things can change if we work at them.
Mm.
Nothing changes just on its own. We have to work at it. And so couples that will say, well, we've had this financial issue, or we've got a new baby, or we've got this other circumstance. Okay, I can understand the reason for why that's stressful. Absolutely. But we've got to go from that reason to then putting in the work to make it better. So that's a big part of my program is not just talking about the problem or the
Mhm.
reason, but let's dedicate time regularly, just like you would go to the gym, to practice your craft, to work on your body. In your relationship, we need to set aside time where we're practicing skills and habits to build trust, to build closeness. For couples that take each other for granted or feel complacent because they've been with that person for so long, it's not going to change. You're not going to rediscover that joy or that passion unless you work at it.
Right. Yeah. And your program is a 12 week program.
Correct.
Can you go into a little bit of, once you've gone to, I normally call it discovery phase, right? But you're going through this discovery phase of understanding why are we in this situation? You find those reasons, and now you have to draft more or less the game plan of how I'm going to be working with you in the next 12 weeks, right? And while I'm
Hmm.
sure you have specific things you want to hit on, every relationship might be a little bit different, right? And so
Hmm.
just talk, high level, just talk to me about how does that look like? What is, the first week, the second week? Just break it down for us to kind of get an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I am both a couples and individual therapist, and I, lead this 12-week program. And I love that I get to do both because when most people think about, therapy, it's this really long-term process of
Hmm.
self-discovery and insight, and that can go on for years. Um, and then in this 12-week program I designed, I wanted it to be time limited. I want people to think about making a big change in a set amount of time so that we can get through the complacency or the just that inertia of keeping things the same. So over 12 weeks, in week one, a big part of that focus in week one is understanding emotionally focused therapy EFT. It's a framework that I'm trained to use, highly researched, highly regarded for relationships and couples. So to understand how that framework is built, and then we go right away into setting goals, objectives for the rest of the 12 weeks. So that happens in week one, understanding the framework and then setting a path. So each person, you can do this program as an individual,
Mhm.
people who are maybe out of a relationship that didn't go well and want their next one to feel differently,
Mm.
or for a couple to do this program together. But right in that first week, we're setting a high level goal and then smaller objectives so that each week over the 12, we can track progress. And by the end of that 12 weeks, see the big shift that happens. So that's just in week one, setting that framework. Right now, I'm just starting a new 12-week program. I do this a few times a year. It starts in January, in April, and in September. So tomorrow I have week two of kind of
Mm.
one of those sets. And in week two, we talk really about the body and about how the body responds when we're in a relationship. So our body's always doing something. It's always
Yeah.
moving towards connection or towards disconnection, right? We're either hungry or we're full. It's never all or nothing. And so we're going to talk about how the body responds when we're in connection with another person. Because I know everybody listening, like when we're in a conflict with our partner or we're not feeling good about things, I am tense. I might have a hard time sleeping. I might be taking shallow breaths and feel tight. So our body knows what's happening. And on the flip side, when we're feeling really good in our relationship, if we're cuddling on the couch, we're feeling close, my body's at rest, I am relaxed, and we can use the way our body feels as signals and as help to really um, guide us towards what our relationship needs. So that'll be tomorrow. That's week two. And yeah, throughout the program, there's a little bit of a different focus each week as we move towards shifting that intimacy back towards connection and closeness.
Yeah. I love the fact that you also work and focus on again on individuals, right? And as you mentioned, it could be that, and I like the idea of maybe it didn't go too good in a previous relationship. So how about if we kind of work on making the next one much better by understanding what were some of the challenges you faced, and extracting those lessons. And then utilizing those lessons to become better at the next relationship, right? And it kind of goes back to the idea of people get hung up on the past and then they use the past as a life sentence or something negative. And I said, no. Again, going back to that is how can I utilize some of those lessons and the ones that help, let me take those. And the ones that didn't, let me learn from them so that I can become a better person as opposed to just getting hung up on the past and then affecting your future, right? So I think
Hmm.
that's pretty unique that you do that, and that's pretty amazing. Um, and so you said you have this, you do one every couple of months. It sounds like almost once every quarter. Um, is that to be able to help you kind of spend more time and make sure that you give ample time to all those 12 weeks, to give ample time to your people that you're working with, and also to help you reset it and figure out same thing like you, what worked. Let me see if I can shift something from the next one. What's the reason of just
Hmm.
that?
Yeah. Well, so it's a live program. So that
Mm,
12 weeks, right? Each week there's a video call with me and with the group. And so, yeah, throughout that 12 weeks they can ask me questions. There's homework in between. It's interactive. It's in real time. And so, yeah, that group of people will go through that 12 weeks. I'll take a couple weeks, off from the program and then we
yeah,
start the next round with a new group of people. And that's the model that I have right now to give people, a few opportunities during the year to sign up and to connect with me. And that's been working well. It may be something that I adjust in the future, but for right now, that works well with my schedule to start a program in January, have one going in the spring, and then again in the fall.
yeah.
And yeah, I also, like you just said, that focus on both individuals and couples is really helpful. Is another part of my story is that I'm divorced now, and I co-parent. We have two kids together, so we
Mhm.
co-parent together. But when we separated and divorced, that was a very difficult time. That was not something like anybody, right? You go into a marriage expecting one thing, and it did not work out the way that we thought. And I carry responsibility for part of that. And I very easily could have kept doing the same stuff that I was doing, making some of the same mistakes in relationships. And, I worked really hard on myself during that time so that going into my next relationship, I would show up differently and the relationship could feel better, feel different. And, I'm in a wonderful relationship now. I've been together with my partner for a couple years now. And, we don't know the end of that story for sure,
Right.
but I know that in the time we've been together, I am not showing up in the same way as I did before. And I'm very proud of that work that I've done. And, you know, just like I said all along for the work that I do, I bring myself into it. And I very much believe that when people put in the time and the work, that things can change and be different. And so, yeah, anybody who has struggled in their relationships and is doubting themselves or, doubting their ability to connect and feel safe with a partner, it can be different. It's not
Yeah.
easy, but
Right.
it can happen.
Yeah, definitely. And part of that is understanding his and her needs, right? And I think that's a big factor of that too, right? Sometimes, at least for me, sometimes I feel like, why doesn't this person, my partner, doesn't understand where I'm coming from? But again, there's a big differentiator in certain things of how we go about life, and so I'm sure that's part of that. Let me ask you this, and I would say that as many people, and being quite candid with this, as many people they want to make sure that they come out successful after your 12-week program, right? uh
Mhm.
how many of those say, hey, I want more? Because I'm sure, like anything, there's always that continuous improvement, or I need to get more. There might be something that I'm missing. Do you ever have people that want to re-sign up for another 12 weeks, or maybe, hey, I need maybe another week or two, because I'm there, but I feel like I'm not there yet?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, yeah, I'm also really big on continuous improvement myself. And so, yeah, for my program, there's different ways that people can work with me. What I try to be most focused on is getting a lot of benefit during that 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a specific situation or like an individual need that wasn't quite met in that 12 weeks, or one thing really great happened and then we discovered we actually have these other needs,
Yeah, right.
then there are absolutely other ways to connect with me and work with me. I don't have a part two for this program, or
Gotcha.
something for everybody to get more at this point, because I really want for that 12 weeks to give just an overload almost of tools and practices to help with. But yeah, it is a lifelong journey, right? I don't expect for any 12-week program to be the end of the story for that relationship. But what I do very much want is for it to take a couple from conflict or disconnection back to closeness and
Gotcha.
have tools and habits so that they can do a lot more just with the two of them than they were able to before.
Gotcha. So part of it is, at the end of the program, like you said, they have tools, or more or less disciplines that they should follow through, right? To
Mhm.
stay on track. Got it. Talk about disciplines and those kind of tools and habits. Let's talk about your habits. Let's talk about your tools. Let's talk about the things you do specifically on a daily basis to kind of keep you up and running and going.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very much a structure and a habit person. So yeah, no, I every morning, not first thing because with my kids getting up for school, it's dark in the mornings. But as
Yeah.
soon as the sun comes up and my kids are out the door, I'm taking a walk outside to get fresh air and sunlight, and then I do quick stretches and an exercise routine before I start my work day. And if I skip that, it's bad news for the rest of the day. So
Yeah.
I'm not perfect, nobody is, but probably 6 days out of the week, that's how I start my day. And then throughout the day, I'm doing things like drinking water. I have my personal projects, reading books, playing guitar, things like that, where I have my
Mm,
personal pursuits that I put in a little bit of work at each day. So on the personal side, I always have, 3 or 4 things that I'm working on and that I get excited about doing each day. On the relationship front, I very much want to practice what I preach. And so,
right.
a big thing that I teach couples and work on, like I said earlier, setting aside that time to work on your relationship. So, every 2 weeks, my partner and I have a structured relationship check in, which I teach in my program. And like I mentioned earlier, at intimacyshift.com, I have a free giveaway for how to structure this conversation. But every 2 weeks, we have a relationship check in where we connect with each other, get ourselves really regulated and safe to talk about things. And then we go over, what's happening in our relationship, what's been going really well, or what's not been going really well. This past weekend, we had a pretty emotional conversation about some things that weren't feeling so good.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was a hard conversation, but I'd rather have that every 2 weeks than resentment gets built up and stored, and then we're blowing up on each other. So yeah, that's a practice that I have in my personal life that has done a world of good for my relationship, but sometimes is hard medicine to swallow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So those are a few things in my life that I keep
Yeah.
really structured.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. And sometimes it's funny how sometimes we might do that if we have a 9 to 5 job, right? You have kind of like your check-ins or your reviews with your boss and how you're performing or how things are going. Sometimes you might even do that with your friends, right? Very seldomly do you do this with your partner or your kids, right? And again, like you said, it's very hard to swallow. And I can see also that being a little bit of uncomfortable doing something like that. Like, hey, and I know, and like you said, you have that on intimateshift.com, way to talk about it with your partner. But again, just offhand for someone that doesn't know, is like, all right, it's time to let's go on the table or let's go on the dining room or on the living room. Let's have this conversation. And it feels awkward, like because you would think that in a relationship you shouldn't have to do that. But again, I think it's more so that's the reason why it's so important, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it like anything else, you can get used to it over time. And like I said, this past one was uncomfortable, right? Maybe not awkward as much as uncomfortable because I knew we were going to have the
Right.
conversation, but
Yeah.
I was getting some feedback about
Yeah.
ways that I had shown up that didn't feel so good. So I had a little bit of that, shame, guilt response, but it was, that feedback was given in a loving way. I knew the goal was to work through it and to connect on the other side. And so it was a really good thing. But yeah, we've got to do it in a way that's safe because I
Right.
hear all the time from couples like, Dan, we're having problems in our relationship. When we talk to each other, we argue. You want us to talk to each other more. Like
Yeah.
that's not going to work for
Right.
us.
Right.
And so yeah, we do need to practice some skills so that the conversation actually feels safe and feels supportive. And so the first 2 steps to that happening, number one, are just having it on the calendar so that okay, on Sunday at 5 o'clock, we're going to have this conversation. So I'm not blindsided by it and the other person's not bringing something up in anger in the
Right.
heat of the moment. So that's step one, is just you and your partner put some time on the calendar so that you both know it's happening. And then the second step is, before you start talking about your feelings or your issues or whatever's going on, you do a quick grounding exercise. So either like put on a song, turn the lights down, take some deep breaths, but
Mm,
spend a couple minutes just relaxing your body and feeling like, okay, I'm here in this present moment with somebody that cares about me and that I care about them. And so those first oh, excuse me, those first two steps go a long way to making the rest of the conversation feel more natural and more safe.
Yeah. Something just came up. So let's assume that you said every 2 weeks is kind of when people do this exercise, or is it weekly or every 2 weeks?
Yeah, so for the relationship, depends where you're at. For my
Okay.
partner and I, we do this every other week. But sometimes with couples, to get them in the habit, and if they haven't been doing this for a while, it's every week.
Got you, got you. If something was to come up prior to the scheduled calendar day for you to have this
Yeah.
conversation, um, obviously depending on the issue or the challenge, right? Um, do you just kind of hold on to that until you have that meeting, or do you try to address that in the heat of the moment?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, if there's an emergency situation, we have to handle it
Right,
right then because it's an emergency.
right.
Absolutely. And especially with couples that have a lot of things built up. Like if we have been struggling for a long time and there's a lot of pain points and a lot of triggers, we can schedule more of these like more frequently. You can have one of these structured conversations every day for
Hmm.
a few weeks if that's what you need. So it's really a flexible format, and
Got it.
I would much rather couples schedule more of these and realize like, yeah, actually we don't need to have one of these every day. We can space it out,
Right.
than not have enough and think, oh, we can just do one of these a month. But in between these, structured conversations, we're having arguments, we're feeling resentful, and we're growing farther apart. Like, then let's schedule more of them. And so
Yeah.
it's really, flexible in that way that you can adjust it to what your relationship needs at that moment.
Gotcha. Okay. So then I know people can find you on intimateshift.com. Any other place where people can connect, find you, follow you, learn more about your programs, and essentially, if they need someone to work with you, where else can they find you?
Yeah, so I am trying to keep things simple for me and for
For
everybody.
sure.
So intimacyshift.com, start there.
Okay.
I am not great at keeping up with all the other channels, so I'm
Yeah.
putting more of my focus into my website and then the emails that I send to people that join me and want that free handout. So that's where I'm sending people.
Okay. Awesome. Intimacyshift.com. That's the place to go. My last question for you. You've given us a lot of great things, and uh, maybe taking you a little bit outside of the relationship aspect, but I still think that is of value, right? For the people that are listening to us and are watching us, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one thing you can say to them so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Mm, yeah. Uh, Simple but foundational for me is my breath. I can take it with
Mm,
me everywhere I go. It's always available to me. Take that one or more slow, deep breaths so that you can think straight, right? And you can determine what's my next action from there. That first action is the breath, and then we'll go from there.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Something, as I said, very simple, yet underutilized. And I think, yeah, when you calm yourself down and then you can definitely think more straight as to what will be the next action. Dan, again, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. I love what you're doing. I love everything you have going on for yourself. So again, once again, thank you for being here. Any last minute things you want to share?
No, I really appreciate the time and what you're doing and just the positive aspect of overcoming, right? You can overcome anything, right? I believe that too, and was really glad to be able to speak with you today, Cesar.
For sure, Dan. Thank you so much again. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please go ahead and check out Dan. Go to intimacyshift.com. I'll go ahead and connect with them and learn more about what he has going on. And also do me a favor. This is such an important topic that please share this with other people as people need to hear this message. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of You Can Work Commenting Podcast Show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.